what's going on, everybody? This is John J Gaming on the mic here, coming at you with a brand new episode of the FCS Dynasty here on NCAA 06. Now, we've already completed a third of the season, and we've seen some good top 25 matchups so far here in year number 6, and we're hoping to continue that here as we will go through multiple weeks here in this episode. Probably be going through both weeks number 6 and weeks number 7, so you're going to want to buckle up, get that popcorn taken out, and it's going to be a good one here, man. So make sure you go ahead, smack that like button, hit that subscribe button as well if you have to be brand new and you love college football just like other college football fans out there, so that we can get this out to more of those college sports fans out there. But with that being said, let's not waste any more time and dive into the various top 25 matchups that we have here in week number 6 alone. So let's go ahead and dive right into it, because we have 4 top 25 matchups just in week number 6 alone. And we'll start things out on a rainy night down here in the Bayou, as we got Northwestern State, who comes in ranked number 24 in the country. They will be taking on the Sam Houston State Cardiac Cats, as they come in ranked number 22 in the country themselves. But they do not have their starting quarterback here. David Bullock is hurt, so Mike Sarman is going to get the start for the Cardiac Cats, as we'll go ahead and get things underway here, as we'll see Matt Lewis throw to the left-hand side, but gets intercepted to start this game out. And late in the first quarter of action, we might finally see some points get on the scoreboard. A scoreless first quarter, but eventually that mold was completely broken, as Sam Houston State, even though they go 3 and out following the interception, they do at the very least tie things up, and it was a very defensive game. We'll to keep it that way, all tied up at 3 apiece. No one has scored a touchdown yet, but then we get into that second half of action, and boy, do we start out that second half with an absolute bang, as that's going to be Miller down the sideline, and nobody is going to catch him. Touchdown, Sam Houston State, and the Cardiac Cats, they take the lead late in the third quarter. Still a very defensive struggle though. 10-6 is going to be your score, but Northwestern State in striking distance, and Bo Arias, he is going to bring the hammer down on the Cardiac Cats. He's going to sidestep his way into the end zone, and that 71-yard touchdown was the absolute difference in this one, as the Demons on that demon time, they do win a very tightly contested game. 16-10 will be your final score. But now we jump into yet another top 25 game. Ironically enough, not the FCS game of the week. We got Western Carolina, your defending national champions, by the way. They come in ranked number 2 in the country, and they're taking on the number 19 ranked Texas Southern Tigers. And this has typically been a game in this series that has decided who ends up going to the conference championship game. Traditionally, it has been either Western Carolina or Texas Southern, at least in most years in this series. We'll see if that ends up being the case here in year number 6. But that being said, first drive of the game does not go well for Texas Southern, as it looks like we got ourselves a fumble on the field, and that's recovered by the outside linebacker Corey Hopkins, who's one of your guys' custom players as well. But the Catamounts do have to settle for a field goal, so they don't take full advantage of the turnover force, but they do at least get some points on the board, open things up with a 3-0 lead. But then we do also see Andrew Akbar. He's hurt in this game as well, so they're without their starting quarterback. For now, it doesn't affect them too terribly much. Second drive, they come out, get some points on the board. They do have a 7-3 lead, but then Willie Beeman trying to go to work here, trying to cook, but then gets hit from behind. Ryan Sack is going to be awarded the sack there, and now Texas Southern, they can go ahead, extend their lead even more so, now making it a 10-point game Again, not really taking advantage of your turnovers. That's been a thing in this one. As now, dropping back to pass, looking over the middle of the field. It's going to be intercepted. Western Carolina finds itself with the football, and they will start it out in the red zone. So we'll see if they can finally take advantage. As that was Kevin McRoyal with the interception, one of your guys' customs. As now, we're going to have first and goal from the 10-yard line. Few plays later. And just like that, that does make it a tie ball game. But second half, though, Willie Beeman trying to cook, but is kind of struggling with the turnovers here in this one. We see him fumble the ball earlier. Also ends up with an interception here as well. So, pretty shaky performance here for the true freshman Willie Beeman Jr., who was named the starting quarterback after a very competitive spring football battle, right? But none of the quarterbacks do end up transferring. But Texas Southern does have that 13-10 lead there. But Western Carolina, they do get themselves together here a little bit as they do find the end zone, so they will retake the lead. And then Beeman, he's going to make a beautiful, oh, I thought it was going to be, wait a minute, ball's fumbled on the ground. What is going on? So we see my mans get picked off, but then the receiver, McClellan, makes a play on the ball, forces the fumble, and then he walks his way into the end zone. It's basically a touchdown pass for Willie Beeman Jr., but with a little bit of extra steps thrown in there as well. Just very intriguing to see that go down. It looks like the Catamounts are going to run away with this game, but not going down without a fight, as we will see Solomon West get into the end zone. They will go for the 2-point conversion, but it will not be enough, though, as the Western Carolina Catamounts, they handle their business early on in conference play. Could very well decide who goes to that conference championship game at the end of the season. And it looks like Western Carolina, they will be driving in the driver's seat. But as this first Saturday night of this episode continues, we have more critical conference games to bring to your door. We got number 14 ranked Eastern Illinois. They are taking on the number 5 ranked Southeast Missouri State Redhawks, as the Redhawks looks to bring a national championship home, and they're looking off to be on an incredible start right now. 4-0 is their record right now, as they got a great receiver by the name of Sean Brown. He's been one of the better receivers in this Ohio Valley Conference that they got going on. But we'll see if Eastern Illinois can play that upset. As we jump right into the second quarter of action, we do not have any points scored initially in that first quarter. However, we do get a big play in the second quarter, though. Absolutely lit up like a Christmas tree. Sean Brown, who was highlighted, was the same guy that puts the football on the ground. You literally cannot make any of this up. So now, Lomdell, he's in the game. He's going to throw down the field. He wants it. Oh, he's going to fire. And it's going to be caught by Phoenix Firebird. Touchdown, Panthers. And that was actually Frank Ballmer that threw that touchdown pass. But what ended up happening there, he gets hurt as well. So Corey Lomdell was actually somebody that got hurt in this game. So did Frank Ballmer. So now Joseph Little is going to come into the game. He's one of your guys' custom players. Little will start by throwing to the left-hand side, but throws a costly interception. You simply cannot get away with that at any point in time, and that's going to end up being a pick six. So now Eastern Illinois finds itself down by a touchdown, as Little again throwing over the middle of the field, but he ends up getting intercepted yet again by one of elder statesman Usman Lewis. He's the one that made a play on that football ultimately, and that is going to cost another field goal for the Eastern Illinois Panthers, who are now down by 2 possessions. As Tyler Johnson, he wants to start cooking here. He wants to fire downfield. He wants a big time play, and he's going to get it wide, butt naked open. He finds his receiver in the end zone for a 69-yard touchdown pass, which is very nice if I say so myself. As Justin William will try to respond, but he does throw yet another interception. This time it's the Ken Trill the senior custom prospect who's able to possibly cement this game. 351 advantage. They do run most of his clock out, and with a minute left, they will try a quick little 26-yard field goal. We'll see if they can knock it through, and it is successful. So the Redhawks will take a 20-point lead, and that is about as far as it gets. As the Redhawks continue their unbeaten streak, they are now 5-0 on the season, while Eastern Illinois drops their second game. But now we have our actual game of the week here in week number 6. Top 5 matchup over in the Big Sky Conference. Got North Dakota State taking on Sacramento State, and this is actually the first conference game for both teams, so should be an interesting one to watch unfold right before our eyes. We'll see if this Sacramento State defense is ready for what North Dakota State runs. They run a run-heavy option attack. This is a team that will pound the ball down your throat. Pause. And now North Dakota State gonna run it off to the right-hand side, and that will be a touchdown for the Bison early. They'll take a 7-0 lead. However, Sacramento State is without its quarterback, Jack Quinn. He is hurt, so we do have the veteran Tyler Murray in the game, as we'll go ahead and throw it to the right-hand side, but it's gonna be intercepted by Maximus O'Hara. Maximus O'Hara not only getting the interception, but taking it back to the crib. And now 14-0 will end up being your score. Sacramento State could be in a little bit of trouble early now, as looking over the middle of the field, it gets intercepted yet again, and just a nightmare of a start for the Sacramento State offense. They already turned the ball over once, that ends up turning into a pick 6, and now North Dakota State, they have the opportunity to add more points on the board early as we get into the second quarter of action. First play of the second quarter, Garrett Key finds the end zone himself, and now facing a 21-0 deficit, and with their backup quarterback as well. Key play here on a 3rd and 5 at the 26-yard line. Got to come away with points. Throws downfield, wants it all, but overthrows his receiver. He didn't even need to put all that touch on the football. That's the scary part in all this. Really was not necessary. I mean, truly, what are we trying to accomplish here? I have absolutely no idea. So the Bison carry a 24-0 lead into the locker room now. And after a failed possession by Sacramento State, Jerry Rice III, he's going to take the ball and he's going to crib this one all the way into the end zone. That will also be a touchdown for North Dakota State. And this has been an absolute butt whooping that we have witnessed thus far. And the crazy part in all of this is that there's not really that much of a difference in total yards on the offensive side of the ball. It really has been like that, but North Dakota State absolutely dominating right now. 38-0 is your score as they try to run the option out on the right-hand side, but Sacramento State actually does recover it, finally does their due diligence to actually force a fumble. Maybe they can actually score something here in the red zone. They are one of the better red zone teams in the nation. Has not shown that way thus far in this one. They finally give it to their tailback, and the tailback finally breaks the seal, but North Dakota State is going to run away with this game ultimately, winning by a final score of 38-7. But now let's go ahead and take the time to take a look at other top 25 teams that played over the course of week number 6. First and foremost, we have the Utah State Aggies, who will have their first loss of the season as they lose to San Jose State 39-24, and now the Aggies are 4-1 and could see a huge drop in the polls. As for Portland State, they continue their strong start to the season, going to Idaho State and winning 45-28. The Sherman Tank ran for 120 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, also had another one through the air too. Chattanooga, meanwhile, continues their great start to the season, this time beating Alabama A&M 34-21. They're now 4-0 on the season as Mark Spicer leads them with 430 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. The Skyhawks of Tennessee Martin will also remain undefeated as they start conference play against the Youngstown State Penguins, winning 31-17. Tate was doing everything for that Skyhawks offense today. Delaware will also remain undefeated, but they had a scare from South Carolina State, and the Bulldogs still searching for their first win this season. A heartbreaker as they lose by 2 points. Paris McPherson scoring the game-winning touchdown. As for New Mexico State, the Aggies winning 30-17 as Northern Colorado falls to 1-4. Stewart was all over the field defensively for the Aggies. Eastern Michigan, however, will also remain undefeated as they beat the Golden Flashes 28-25 as EMU now sits at 4-0 to start the season. However, the New Hampshire Wildcats continue to roll here in season number 6 as Wildcats are now 5-0 thanks to a 35-14 win. Bruno Baggio was in his bag today with 4 total touchdowns. As for the Montana Grizzlies, they also remain undefeated for now, beating an winless Eastern Washington team in conference play, winning 31-10 as Harrison doing a little bit of everything, forcing multiple turnovers and getting a defensive touchdown too. However, we saw a scare from San Diego State as the Aztecs got everything they can handle from the UNLV Rebels, but the Aztecs still win 41-38, which does mean that San Diego State is now 5-0 on the season. However, the Akron Zips were not so lucky as they lose their second game of the season, this one to the Central Michigan Chippewas, 31-17 being your final score, so I would not be surprised to see CMU ranked in the top 25. Of course, we see Georgia Southern handle its business against the Mountaineers of Appalachian State, but a closer game than anticipated as they needed 14 unanswered points to escape with the win on the road. In the last top 25 team to play was Alabama State. They were number 25, but that will not last long as Grambling State stuns them in overtime, 35-32. And it'll be interesting to see if Grambling State gets ranked in the top 25 in the next AP poll. But outside of the top 25, we got a little bit of a surprise here as well, as the Penn Quakers not only getting their first win this season, but blowing out Columbia in the process in Ivy League play. The Quakers win 40-10 as they finally got something going in the win column. As for the late action, the Idaho Vandals played host to St. Thomas, and the Tommies go down 37-7 as Idaho now getting their second win this season, sitting at 2-3 now. So in week number 7, we will again see North Dakota State in a top 25 matchup, but this time they will find themselves on the road taking on the Northern Arizona Lumberjacks, who are also undefeated so far on the season. But that being said, not getting as much respect necessarily, as they do come in ranked as the number 12 team in the country. Now, North Dakota State, they do have a decent passing game for at least a run-heavy offensive team, and Garrett Keefe, who has 5 touchdowns and 2 interceptions coming into this game. As Northern Arizona, they actually do start with the football, but can't do anything with it, putting it in the hands of Brian Burke, who's going to take it down the sideline, and that will certainly get the offensive scoring going for the North Dakota State Bison, who will quickly take a 7-0 lead. Jumping into the second quarter, though, goal line situation for the Bison. We'll see if they go to one of their 2 impact players in the backfield, and sure enough, it's actually going to be Garrett Keefe. He runs it in all by himself. Northern Arizona does not do anything to go and try to cover the quarterback, and it's really shown here in this particular game. Garrett Keefe able to get some good runs in, not only getting 1 rushing touchdown in, oh no, he's actually going to get himself 2 rushing touchdowns in this game, as Northern Arizona quickly falls behind, down 24-3 at the half. But Tyrone Wolf, he can make some big plays on his own as he fires a strike, and his man does take care of the rest, at least scores a touchdown on the opening drive here in the second half of action. But can they stop this Bison rushing attack? And it looks like that answer is going to be a resounding no. They are straight up not having a good time with this running attack as the Bison are now up 31-10. Tyrone Wolf trying to make things a little bit better, but he does the exact opposite as Jim Sato, one of your guys' customs. He'll get his second interception of the season, and with that second interception, he takes it back to the crib. And it was at this point in the game they actually got some of their backups in. At least the Bison did this, so got to see a little bit of St. Thomas action there. He's the backup quarterback for the North Dakota State Bison. Northern Arizona still electing to keep their starters in the game, and it allows the Lumberjacks to pull a little bit closer, make this score look a little bit better than really what the reality was on the football field, because yeah, they only lose by 12, but let's be honest, North Dakota State, they did a really good job of dominating in this game, and they do so in a pretty convincing fashion, winning 38-26 on the road. And with beating them and Sacramento State, that could give them some serious control over the Big Sky Conference. But now we jump into yet another top 25 matchup. This one in non-conference play, actually, as we got the New Hampshire Wildcats, who do come in as the #1 team in America. They will be taking on the Central Michigan Chippewas, and the Chippewas are a football team that was not originally ranked in the top 25. You know, coming from a smaller conference, but made some noise early on in non-conference play. They're ranked, and they could make a statement here against Bruno Baggio, who's one of the best NFL prospects down here at the FCS level. We'll see if he can live up to that NFL status, as we'll see Bruno Baggio dropping back the pass, looks over to the left-hand side, and throws an absolute bullet. And that will be a touchdown for the New Hampshire Wildcats. And so that #1 team in the nation, they will take a 7-0 lead. But then with 1:30 left to play in the first quarter, Central Michigan, they will answer back with a score of their own. They're even doing a little bit of celebrating before they get into the end zone. Now it's all knotted up, and we got ourselves a football game. But one thing that is certainly certain here is that Bruno Baggio, that man was cooking today. He was absolutely cooking, stepping up in the pocket, fires a strike into the end zone, gives New Hampshire the lead once again, and now it's 14-7 in favor of the Wildcats. And the Chippewas will look to try to answer back here. Throws over the middle of the field. It's going to be intercepted. Able to be brought down eventually, but Aaron Johnson gives what is already a potent New Hampshire offense. They give them the opportunity to have an easy drive here, starting essentially in the red zone. And Bruno Baggio, he's going to take advantage, dumps it off to the tailback, Ernie Little. And Ernie Little's going to find the end zone on a 14-yard scamper. Does give the Wildcats their biggest lead of the day, and that's what makes New Hampshire special. Just that ability to score in the red zone. They've been perfect on the day so far. 3 for 3 in this game. As Baggio looks over the middle of the field, finds another receiver, and that will be yet another passing touchdown for the Wildcats. Now 28-7. Now starting to get to that point where Central Michigan, they might be blown off the field here if they are not careful right now. And you know what you don't want to do in these situations? Don't give the ball to Otis Grip. He is somebody that can make a lot of noise, as Otis Grip finds the end zone too. Been a dominating game for the Wildcats. Now 35-7 as Bruno looks for the cherry on top, fires over the middle, but then he will end up throwing an interception as well. So not a perfect day for Bruno Baggio, that is for sure. You know, a little bit of that gunslinger. He's got that confidence in him, but that interception does lead to a Central Michigan touchdown. But too little too late, as the Chippewas do suffer their very first loss of the season, while the New Hampshire Wildcats, they will remain undefeated. As now we jump into a little later in the evening, we got the Grambling State Tigers, led by their custom quarterback Ray Waddle, taking on the true freshman sensation in Louie Beanie Jr. and the Western Carolina Catamounts, who are still your defending national champions. They still got that dog in them, looking good in week number 6 in that game against Texas Southern. But Grambling State is a team that has not made the playoffs thus far in this series. We'll look to see if Willie Beeman Jr. can look to change that, or at least Ray Waddle can. That's who I meant to say. But Western Carolina actually down 3-0 early, as Beeman Jr. is going to try to go to work, throwing to the right-hand side, and it's caught off of the tip, and that's going to be Brian Kahn, who will run his way into the end zone. That will give the Catamounts a 7-3 lead instantly. However, Ray Waddle does end up getting hurt in this game. Actually gets hurt for multiple weeks, but thankfully for them, Grambling State does have a very experienced quarterback in Octavian Cater, who is a senior redshirt. He's one of the older customs that we have left in this series, but that interception right there, that's going to really kill them, and that's not necessarily Cater's fault. I really don't think it was, but it could probably cost him, though. I'll tell you that much. First and goal from the 2-yard line. Willie Beamy is going to throw this ball quickly and actually finds his superstar tight end. That is Billy White, who he manages to find in the end zone. That will be a touchdown for the Catamounts. And now it builds a 20-10 lead as Beeman, still trying to carve up this defense a little bit, finds Brian Kahn yet again down the sideline. That's a touchdown for the Catamounts. That is a 73-yard scamper for Brian Kahn. That's his second touchdown of the day. And at this point, Octavian Cater just trying his best to just keep up, even just a little bit. But Chase Rose, man, he had some other plans in mind. I'll tell you what, throwing an interception, probably not one of them. So now the Catamounts start off another drive here. They've been on fire as of late. And when this true freshman has some time, he's got an arm on him, and he's going to use it, finding the impact tight end, Billy Light, for a 55-yard touchdown. And the Catamounts are now running away with this game right now. Down by 24 plus. And Charles Watts going to put a little bit of icing on the cake. He'll pick off Octavian Cater and take it all the way into the end zone. As the Catamounts win a big game here, a top 25 matchup. Their second top 25 matchup. This one being a blowout, winning 44-10 against the Tigers. But our last top 25 game that we have here in this episode, I at least want to show for right now, we go back to the Ohio Valley Conference here in week number 7 action, as we got the Tennessee Martin Skyhawks. They're soaring to a 4-0 record, as well as the number 6 national ranking in the country, but they got to go on the road. They're going to take on Murray State, as Murray State, a team that I believe made their first FCS playoff appearance here just last season. So Murray State, a solid football program. So is Tennessee Martin, and they got a great quarterback, Henry Paris. He sat for a season behind Donnie Jacobs. He's really taken advantage of the opportunities that's been bestowed upon him thus far. And we'll see how Henry Paris does, not just in simulation, but also in gameplay as well. We know he's a great sim quarterback. We'll see if he's also got it in him in the gameplay, and that's a good way to really shove the doubters wrong, man. Get an early touchdown, make it 7-0 in favor of the Skyhawks. But later on in that first quarter of action, though, Murray State trying to return this kick back. It's fumbled on the ground. There's a scramble for it. It's moving around everywhere. And it looks like the Skyhawks do recover. And they recover in Murray State territory, where we'll see Henry Paris just simply dump it off. And they will score yet another touchdown. So now the Skyhawks are up 14-0 at this moment, as Murray State will go ahead and receive this kickoff yet again, trying to make something happen here, but there's another fumble on the ground, and everything that could go wrong for Murray State, it has gone completely wrong. Thankfully, at least in that particular drive, they only allow a field goal, as Chris Henry, the experienced kicker for the Skyhawks, knocks it through, and they'll take a 17-0 lead into the locker room, actually. But now we jump into that second quarter of action. Paris looks over the middle of the field. His receiver does make the catch, And that is one thing that I am concerned about for Tennessee Martin going forward. Maybe they'll be fine today, but that offense, they're actually only ranked as a C+, which is a little bit on the lower end in terms of FCS football talent, at least here in this series at this point. So how far can Henry Paris take them? It really depends on how competent his supporting cast is, because what you just saw the fumble, and that fumble does lead to a touchdown. However, the defense for Tennessee Martin is still a pretty solid group over there. So this defense is certainly more than capable of making some plays. So we'll see if Henry Paris can make one here with 10 seconds left in the first half. Dropping back to pass. This could be one of the last plays that we see. Paris towards the end zone and throws it over a double coverage. Not a lot of quarterbacks at any level of Division I football can make that pass, and we certainly saw that pass being made there. So now Tennessee Martin extends their lead 24-7, and it could be much bigger now, as how about this Hunidi act, cutting it upfield, and he will be gone like a girl in a country song. Another touchdown for the Skyhawks, as that now gives them a 31-7 lead. And they'll actually go for it here on 4th down. They still have their starters on the field. They want to make a message sent, and that message, I'm sure, is going to be received. They blow out Murray State on the road 38-7, as the Skyhawks still remain undefeated, whereas Murray State, they fall to just 3-2 on the season. So let's go ahead and take a look at the other top 25 games that happened to go down over the course of week number 7. We got James Madison, for example, going on the road to take on Delaware State, but the Dukes got everything that they could handle, nearly losing 29-24, but Heinz Heinlein able to bail them out with 350 yards and 2 touchdowns. As for Southeast Missouri State, they were actually in a close one as well in conference play with the Tennessee State Tigers, but the Redhawks do remain undefeated as they're now 6-0 thanks to a 31-28 victory. Thomas More had 3 touchdowns on the ground. However, Georgia Southern will lose their second game of the season as the Sam Houston State Cardiac Cats, they win 24-21 in that one, as Van Nguyen was the guy who scored that game-winning touchdown for the Bearcats. However, the Delaware Blue Hens continue to roll through this season as they're now 5-0 thanks to a 27-13 victory over the Howard Bison. Tyler Creator ends up with 7 carries, 45 yards on the ground, and had 2 total touchdowns as well. Chattanooga will also remain undefeated on the season as they beat Prairie View A&M 41-28. The MOCS are now 5-0, led by that suffocating defense. Northwestern State, meanwhile, continues to really roll through the middle part of the season, now on a 4-game winning streak as they win 53-23 over the Lafayette Terriers. Matt Lewis threw for 320 yards and 6 touchdowns. However, not only does Portland State lose their first game of the season, they get blown out in their first loss of the season as Eastern Washington, with the surprise of the week, winning 49-14 as our backup quarterback came in for 3 touchdown passes and 290 yards. San Diego State will also remain undefeated for the time being as they beat South Dakota State 43-29. The Aztecs now find themselves 6-0 on the season. Speaking of top 25 teams that are undefeated, New Mexico State will remain that way as well. They barely beat Oral Roberts, so 10-9 in what was a very bitter defensive struggle. However, Florida International's time in the top 25 does not last very long. They lose 24-17 in Sun Belt Conference play to the Troy Trojans in what is a heartbreaking loss for the Panthers. Speaking of heartbreaking losses, Nicholls State loses their first game of the season to the Texas State Bobcats 39-32 as Mitchell throws for 5 touchdown passes as well as 416 yards as well. Montana, however, will remain undefeated on the season as they climb to number 5. That should continue as they win 32-10 over the Idaho State Bengals in Big Sky Conference play. That being said, Eastern Michigan Eagles also will remain undefeated for now, as they were in quite the shootout against Western Illinois. The Lumberjacks giving their best offensive effort of the season, but it was not enough as they lose 49-56. However, Texas Southern was fine to remain in the top 25, and they certainly will do that here, winning 28-24 against the Golden Lions of Arkansas Pine Bluff, as Justin Patrick ran for 144 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also remaining in the top 25 for now is Eastern Illinois, as they beat the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers 28-14, as Justin Irving ended up with 2 total touchdowns on the day. However, we get another big surprise in the Big Sky Conference, as Montana State falls 38-35. This is their second loss of the season, one that will likely kick them out of the top 25. Speaking of the Big Sky Conference, Sacramento State was also playing on that late night, and they do end up getting back on the right track, winning 34-20 against the North Dakota Fighting Hawks. Sacramento State back after losing big time to North Dakota State in week number 6. As for notable results outside of the top 25, we do have quite a few. For example, we have Tulane taking down the Charleston Cougars 45-13 in what was a blowout, and gets the Green Wave back to over 500. And then we'll also see Utah State get back into the top 25, but they had to do so by beating Northern Colorado 36-30 in what was surprisingly a pretty close game. Also, we see the Rice Owls go on the road to take on the Villanova Wildcats, and Wildcats are still looking for their first win this season, losing 55-21 to that Rice Owls team. So we are now halfway through the season, just about, and this is what your top 25 is looking at this juncture of the season. Now, that being said, your top 6 is pretty much the same to this point as New Hampshire, Western Carolina, North Dakota, also Southeast Missouri State, Montana. Teams like that, they're all remaining in their same spots. Top 7, pretty much the same as of right now. Then once we get into week number 8, though, we do start seeing a little bit of movement. San Diego State moves up to number 8. They move up 1 spot. We also see Chattanooga move up 1 spot as well. They're now number 9 in the country. Rounding out your top 10 is the Sacramento State Hornets. They do recover. They did start out number 3 in the country, but that loss to North Dakota State did hurt them quite a bit. Not a good loss there. However, Eastern Michigan, they continue to climb up the rankings. They're now number 11 in the entire country. Also, some teams to watch out for in the top 25 is James Madison, who's now number 12 after a close win against Delaware State. New Mexico State moves up 4 spots, even though they barely beat Oral Roberts, who they themselves have not had a very good season at all. So a very interesting decision by the AP top 25 there. Northern Arizona, they only moved down a couple of spots. Good call there. They lose to a very good North Dakota State football team. They could be your Big Sky Conference champions. Nicholls State did get stunned, but they got punished more so, moving down 7 spots. They're down to 15. Now that we're in the bottom half of the top 25, we have Eastern Illinois, who's number 16 in the country after a 2-touchdown win over Western Kentucky. We also have Northwestern State up 3 spots. They're now number 17 in the country after a 30-point win over the Wofford Terriers. 18 will be Texas Southern. They're here after a 4-point win over Arkansas Pine Bluff, but they did lose at home to the Western Carolina Catamounts earlier in this episode. Now at 19, we have Sam Houston State, who does get themselves back into the top 25. They briefly left after a 6-point loss to Northwestern State. They're back in here after upsetting Georgia Southern. Speaking of Georgia Southern, though, we do see the Eagles fall 4 spots after an upset loss at home. And now the last few teams that will take top 25 spots for now is Utah State at 21, Murray State at 22, even though they were just blown out, Central Michigan at 23, even though they were also blown out by the New Hampshire Wildcats. 24 is Portland State after they got blown out by Eastern Washington. And at number 25, getting back in there, is the Texas State Bobcats after their win against Nicholls State. As for some teams that are currently working their way, not in top 25 necessarily, but they are receiving some consideration. Got the Stanford Bulldogs as the last team out of the top 25 poll, as they're receiving 184 votes. But other teams to watch out for is Grambling State, Alabama State, followed by Southeastern, Eastern Kentucky, and rounding out the group is North Carolina A&T State, who has received 1 vote. But now this is how your Heisman Trophy race is going to be shaking out as of right now. Still in the lead, we got Carl Allen, the sophomore running back from Sam Houston State, continuing his strong season, now sitting at 13 total touchdowns on the year. He helped in that big-time upset against the Georgia Southern Eagles. Also in second place, we have yet another running back in Paris McPherson, who is having 11 total touchdowns so far in the year. He had 100 yards of total offense against Howard. Third place, somebody that's actually moving up right now, that's Michael Johnson. In overtime, he came through, led that game-winning touchdown drive in conference play, so you love to see that in terms of Heisman moments. And then rounding out your group is Travis Johnson, one of your guys' customs. The senior quarterback from Southeast Missouri State does have 15 total touchdown passes on the season. And at number 5, we have the senior wide receiver from James Madison. That's Brad Aldrauzy. And Brad Aldrauzy with 40 catches, 713 yards, and 6 touchdowns on the season thus far. But we are already halfway through the season here, and because we're already halfway, we're going to start thinking about those conference bids. Who's going to get those automatic qualifiers to get into the FCS playoffs here in not week number 6, but year number 6. So what we're going to do in the next episode, obviously, going to have some gameplay, possibly from weeks 8 through 10, maybe week number 11 as well, depending on how things shake out around the country. And then after we get to a good stopping point there, we're going to take a look at the conference standings, see how things are shaking out, conference races for you guys specifically to keep an eye out for as we move through this season. And I hope you guys have been enjoying it. And if you have, I do need you guys to do me a massive favor for me. I need you guys to go ahead, smack that like button for me if you haven't done so already. And if you're brand new to the channel and you like sports gaming, simulation leagues, this might be the channel for you. And if that's the case, hit that subscribe button for me, because a like and subscribe gets us a little bit closer to the next like and subscribe. So that being said, this is John J Gaming on the mic signing off. Hoping you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.